a Hold My Beer story. And this is secondhand. This was not me. I was not there, but I was told about this. So my old buddy Casey, who is one of the funniest people on the planet, used to work for an outfit. For 7 or 8 years he worked for an outfit in Kansas. And it's one of, if not the biggest cow outfits in Kansas. But Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, they're kind of different than other places in the sense that Kansas makes a lot of grass. And so you can run a heck of a lot of cattle on a small spot. But that grass isn't very strong. So they basically have to supplement those cattle year round with brewers or distillers grain in a pellet form. And they've got these cool boxes with rotating thingamajiggers that kind of work like your ice machine on the back of trucks and go through there and pellet these cows. And so the way most of those ranches in Kansas are set up, they're relatively small pastures, like a 500-acre pasture is a big pasture around there in some parts. I know there's somebody out there going, well, I don't know, whatever. In some parts, like a 500 or 1,000-acre pasture is a great big pasture. But you drive in there with the feed truck and you hit the siren and all the cows kind of gather themselves because you grain them every day. The consequence is 1 or 2 guys can run a ranch like that. They can run a 3,500, 4,000 mother cow ranch. Just 1 or 2 guys. One guy in the feed truck, one guy horseback. You can get those cows to go anywhere because they'll follow the feed truck. So anyway, and not taking anything away from those guys, they do a lot more doctoring and stuff like that than other people do. But that's just to set up the scene for how this works. So on that particular ranch, they'd brand, they'd do their thing every year, and then they'd go on the wagon. Well, what that amounted to was the guy that ran the place had a really cool old chuck wagon and a team, and they were a really good broke team. And once a year, when Brandon was pretty much all over, they'd take the wagon down and they'd park it by the creek. And it was like 4 miles down there. They'd park it by the creek and they'd set up camp and they'd camp for a week. And then basically they'd just every morning get on their horse and ride over to this pasture and brand whatever calves had been born after the branding, and then ride to this pasture and brand, so they'd brand 12 calves a day for a week, or 25 calves a day for a week, or whatever. But it was just a fun deal, and the owner invited friends out, and other people invited friends out, and they camped and played Lonesome Dove for a week. So Casey, being Casey, he all those guys were getting excited because the wagon was coming up, and they're going to camp out and this and that. And so they're calling capriolas and they're ordering bedrolls and all this. And so Casey had a little girl at the time. She's a big girl now, but he went in and dug around in her closet and she had a strawberry shortcake sleeping bag, little kid's sleepover sleeping bag. And so he rolled that up and threw it in the wagon, and that's what he brought for his bedroll. And of course he's a grown man, so it only came up to like here on him when he was in bed, but they'd throw out their bedrolls and their bed tarps and the whole 9 yards and be a real cowboy on the wagon. Casey, he'd throw out his strawberry shortcake sleeping bag, and of course, it kind of made everybody feel kind of sheepish. So he thought that was so much fun. Like I said, he was there for like 7 or 8 years. So every year on the wagon, he would go to Goodwill and buy a different, he'd buy a Ninja Turtle or a My Little Pony or whatever, little kid's sleeping bag to camp in. And then the only other story I remember that he told me about that was one of the guys that first year, in particular, this one guy was really proud about the fact that he got up in the morning and made coffee on the fire. And boy, he's make that coffee. Get up first thing, make that coffee. So Casey, he figured out what time that guy was getting up and making coffee. And Casey'd get up a half hour earlier and make the coffee. And that guy, oh, wow, you already made the coffee? And Casey, oh, yeah, shoot, I was up. So I just went ahead and made it. And so he knew that guy then would set his alarm for earlier. And so Casey would just set his alarm half hour earlier than that guy. And Casey'd get up and make the coffee. And by the time the whole dang thing was over, Casey was having to get up at 2 in the morning to make coffee just to jack with this guy. But that's the kind of sense of humor he's got. And that's what you do to make life fun, is you jack with other people. So that's Casey's adventures on the wagon.